Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we're going to be making a quilling paper version of the silly little gnomes that you see everywhere around the holiday season. So you're going to need a few different colors for these little gnomes. You're going to need a color to make their big tall hats. I'm going to be using the red. You need a color for their body. I'm going to be using that green. And then we're going to be making some little tiny shoes. So I have sort of a beige color there. You're going to need whatever color quilling paper you'd like for their nose. That's going to be the only part of their actual body you're going to see. You're also going to need some white, because if you picture those gnomes, they have these big bushy beards and little mustaches. So you're going to need some white quilling paper as well. All of my strips there are 1/8 inch wide. For quilling tools, you're going to be rolling a lot, so you're going to need whatever tool you're most comfortable with. It can be a slotted tool. It can be a needle tool, it can be an automatic quilling tool. You might want to grab some tweezers because some of these pieces are pretty tiny. You may also need some scissors. We're going to be making some very thin strips. So if you don't already have thin strips, you're going to cut them in half. A small paintbrush, the glue of your choice. I'm just using Elmer's in a needle nose container. You might want to grab a cork board or some other surface to work on, some pins, and also a ruler is going to come in handy because we're going to do a lot of measuring for this project. So the first thing we're going to do is make the main body. So picture like a cozy sweater or whatever color you want that part of their body to be. I'm using this leaf green. These strips are from Quill Creations, so they're about 18 inches long. We're going to be taking 6 of them and gluing them from end to end. So this is what we do sometimes when we just need a whole lot of length in quilling paper. They'd only come in so long of strips, so you need to glue them end to end. If you are using a different brand of quilling paper, this length total is going to be about 108 inches. And it's going to give us a tight coil when we're done that's about a little bit bigger than a quarter maybe. Notice from the beginning I tore off all the ends of these papers because that is going to make the transition from piece to piece a little bit smoother. All of those little fibers of paper that are left over after we tear are what's going to grab onto the paper next to it and just make it so that when you start rolling all of your strips, which we're going to do here in a second, you won't have big bumps every time there's a transition from one strip to the next. So I have all my 6 strips in a line here, and I'm using my slotted quilling tool that for some reason wants to not start rolling. Here we go. So I'm just going to roll this entire long strip up from one end to the other. I will let you know, pretty much no matter what tool you use, there comes a point on a strip this long where it just gets a little unruly and decides it just doesn't want to roll up nicely anymore. So at that point, you can take it off your tool. Already here, mine's starting to give me a little bit of trouble. You can take it off your tool and finish rolling it by hand. But what you want to be careful of is that you don't let your coil open up at all as you're taking it off. So you can see I'm kind of holding mine in place and pushing from the bottom. And that way I didn't let any air in. I didn't let it unravel at all. And then I can just roll it up here all the way to the finish line. Now here I am at the end of that roll, and it's a nice tight coil. It is, like I said, a circle about the size of a quarter, but I want it to be a little bit more of an oval shape. So I'm going to hold it between my thumb and my pointer finger and just kind of pulse open very slightly. I'm barely letting go of it, just to get a little bit of space in between a little bit of those layers of paper. I don't want to open it all the way. I don't want it to be a tight coil. It's just a little bit of air, and that's going to allow me to squeeze it a little bit. If I tried to squeeze that tight coil as it was, it wouldn't go anywhere. It's just too tight. There's no wiggle room. I want to squeeze the top and the bottom to make it a little bit more of like an egg shape or an oval. I'm going to need a little bit of help here in a second with that, so I'm going to grab some pins, but I also want that shape to stay. So this is what I'm going to be using. This is the back of this piece. I'm going to flip it over when I'm done. I'm putting glue all over the back of it. And then I'm going to use my paintbrush to spread that glue around and make sure it's in all those little crevices, kind of pushing down as I brush. And once that glue dries, it's going to stay in the shape that I want it. So again, I mentioned before, I didn't really think it was as oval as I wanted it to be. So I'm just going to use some pins. One in the center there to make sure it really doesn't go anywhere, and then one on either side, so that as that glue dries, it's really going to stay in that oval shape that I want it. There we go. So that's going to be the body of our gnome. Now we're going to move on to the beard. So for the beard, I'm doing something sort of similar. I am gluing 3 of these 18-inch strips back to back. And for the math, that is about 54 inches. But remember that the measurements I give don't have to be exact for your project. You can always make your creations bigger or smaller, put your own spin on it. This is just a starting off place. So here we go with my last strip there. And another note, when you're making these long strips, you want to try to make sure that you glue your pieces on as straight as you can so you don't end up with something growing crooked on you. And luckily these strips, when you make them really long, do dry very, very quickly. So you can start rolling just like we did before. You're going to roll this one again all the way from end to end. Try not to let any air in that. Keep it on your tool if you can. With 3 strips, it's definitely a little bit easier than with the 6 from the body. But also, you know, some people only roll their quilling by hand. So whatever makes you comfortable. You just want it to get all the way to the end without letting it open up too much. There we go. Get that one finished up, and then we'll make our little beard shape. All right, so here we are at the end of our tight coil of white, and we are just like before, gonna just give it a couple quick pulses to get a little bit of air in there, and then glue down the end. And now, because we have a little bit of space in our tight coil, we're going to be able to shape it just a little bit. You want to grab your tweezers, keep those handy. I'm going to pinch as much as the end as I can. You're only going to get a little bit because we didn't let this open up very much. We want a little bit of a peak there, barely a teardrop shape. Grab your tweezers, pinch that little point real hard, and give it a bend. You just want the tiniest of tiny little curves at the bottom of that beard. If you like the look of your quilling to be opened up more, you'd like to see the layers of paper, by all means, you can change the sizing of your paper. You'll need less strips together. You can let them open up more and just do a similar design. I was just going for more of a solid look this time. But anyway, I'm going to brush glue on the back of this shape again to make sure that I don't lose any of the detail. And now we're going to move on to the nose of our gnome. This is the only part, like I said before, of the little body we're going to be able to see. So you choose the skin tone you would like. I have a few different examples at the end of different shades. But what you want to do is you want this to be a thinner width than the other strips that you use. So notice that this is a standard 1/8 inch paper. I'm using very small scissors to cut it all the way. This is a 16-inch strip, all the way down the center to make 2 thinner strips. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you might have seen me do this before. Normally I do it for shorter lengths. It's not difficult to do in longer. You just have to really just kind of go slow and make sure that you're not cutting too close to the edge on either side. If you have thinner paper in a shade you'd like to use that by all means. But I didn't want anybody to have to go out and buy another pack of 1/16 inch or 2mm paper just for this 16 inches that you might need. So anyway, I rolled this little tiny strip all the way to the end, and we're doing a similar thing. We're just opening up a tiny bit to make it an oval shape, but keep most of the density of that tight coil together. Glue down the end, and that is our little nose. There we go. That's about it. If you want to brush that with glue to make sure that stays, you can do that as well. So now we have the 3 pieces we've made so far: the body, the beard, and the nose. Everybody's dry now, so we're going to start putting this together. And the idea of this little gnome guy is that it's sort of stacked. These 3 pieces are going to be stacked on each other. So I have my beard here. I want the top of the beard and the top of the body to be flush on the same level. So I'm going to just apply some glue to where the top of that beard should be. And I want for this guy, the hook of my beard to go in that direction. So I want to make sure that I have it going the way I want. And there you can see that the ends are flush together. And then we're going to do the same thing with the nose. We just want that at the very tippy top of where the beard starts. If you can picture these little gnomes that you see for a lot of decorations, the nose is all you can see, right? You can't see the eyes, you can't see the rest of the head, you can just see a little nose peeking out. So that's kind of where we're going so far. Now we're going to move on and we're going to get the feet done next. I have 3 strips here of this paper. It's from Craft Harbor and it's called beige. It almost looks like a not shiny gold though. So 2 strips, 3 inches each. Rolled it up on my quilling comb and pinched the end real hard because we're just going to make some little curved teardrops here. Little teardrop shape, and then these are very small. Push it around your tool just to get sort of a downward slope there. These are going to look like little floppy shoes coming out from the body of our little guys here. I'm going to do the same thing to the other piece. So we have 2 of those exactly the same. And then we're just going to glue them coming from the bottom, just like I said. The peak of our teardrop is going to face the inside. And this is where your tweezers will definitely come in handy because these pieces are very small. Let's get our last shoe on there. Just about like that. And then we can let that dry. We're going to move on to our hat next, which is not complicated, but a little bit more time consuming than the rest here. So we're building the hat sort of in layers, and the pieces of those layers are going to be made up of a bunch of different teardrop shapes. So the length of strips you need are going to vary. The bottom layer is going to be the biggest. So I have 2 strips here that are between about 7 and 6 inches long. This one is about 7 inches long. So I rolled it up on my tool all the way, took it off, let it open up, made a big pinch to make a teardrop. Get that to glue down, and then I'm going to pinch a little bit on one side just for this layer here. I want it to be a little bit flatter on the bottom. That's about what I'm looking for. I'm going to do the same thing to the other strip here. This one, like I said, is a little bit smaller. Roll it all the way up to the end. Get it off of my tool and let it open up just a little bit. Then we're going to give it a big pinch on one side and glue down the tail just like before. And then one little pinch on the top and bend it to give it a curve. Now, I want these 2 pieces to sort of sandwich just a little bit on each other, but I also want them to curve around the head here, or the lack of the head, which is the top of the beard, I guess I should say. So I want to make sure they're going to sort of line up and curve the way I want them to. That's sort of what I'm looking for there. Now remember, the beard is a higher layer than if I just let this sit and dry. So I'm not going to be able to do that, so I just want to make sure that the curve is there. So that's why I lined it up, but I'm not gluing it on the body right now because it wouldn't stay. Gravity would kind of keep pushing it down. So sandwich those two pieces together and just kind of hold it up to make sure that it's got a curve to it on the bottom that's going to fit around the top of that beard. Get that aside. Now, we have made a bunch of similar teardrops that are curved without that little tiny point on that one side. These can just be teardrops in increasingly smaller lengths. So remember, those first two were 7 inches, a little less than 7. These ones are more like 6 inches, and I'm going to keep layering them and sandwiching them up to make a taller hat. Now, I want these to be really stacked on there nicely. I could hold them, but I'm going to just pin these together for a couple of minutes just to make sure that these two pieces I put on just now really kind of stay secure and keep the shape of what I'm looking for. Now I have a couple even smaller pieces, still shingling them higher and higher, and the hat's going to get skinnier and skinnier. And because these are kind of shingled back and forth, they sort of look like they're kind of a knit hat, like a cable knit sort of situation. That might just be me, but that's what I see. There we go. So the roundest part of the teardrop is going to the outside, and the curved point is going towards the inside. And we keep stacking them up until we get to the size we're looking for, which is just going to be one more piece after this one. And this one isn't as much as a teardrop as it is kind of just a half moon shape. So I put some glue on the bottom of that guy and get that on the very tippy top. And those smallest pieces are all about 4 inches, those last 3 there. And now, what is a hat but without a little pom-pom on the top? It's just not right. So I have another 4 inches of just a white strip. I'm just going to roll that up and let it open up to a loose coil, just about that big, and glue that down. These might look cute with a little bit of a fringed detail on the top as well. And I want to get that guy glued to the top of my hat, just like so. Now it's really important at this point you let that hat totally dry and let that pom-pom dry, because we want to get it glued so that it's meeting the layer at the beard level, not at the body level. That's going to be difficult to get it to dry like that, right? Because it's just going to be floating in air. So what I did is just make sort of a little kickstand for the underneath. I have a tight coil about 6 inches of the same color that I used to make the hat, so it sort of blends in, and that allows it to sit on the same level as the beard. So now I can apply some glue to the beard. I've already made sure that my hat has the right curve to it because I pressed it against the beard at the beginning. It's going to have the right height to it because I put that little red piece on the back, and it's going to dry nicely. And then for our last little design element, we're going to make a fluffy mustache. So I have 4 inches of the same bright white that I used for the beard, but cut down the middle in the same way that I did for the nose, because I want this to be just as thin as the nose. Rolled it up, and then I'm making a teardrop just like we made for the hat. But I want this to really be curved because we're sort of looking for like a handlebar mustache kind of vibe. So I'm really going to pinch this real hard around my tool handle so it kind of points up in the air And then going to do the same thing to the other side. Once I have both of those, it's just a matter of gluing them right underneath the nose. Just a little bit of glue there. And then just placing it right underneath. If you want to make these a little bit bigger so they really come off the sides, of course you can do that. And there we go. Our little happy gnomes. You can definitely change up the color on these. Here are some with striped hats. So instead of just using the same color, I've alternated and put those in the layers just to make it look a little bit more striped. And I have some navy here as well, beards pointing in all different directions. I experimented with using some arms, but I decided they looked a little bit more penguin-like than gnomes. So if you like the arms, they're about 10 inches long. It's up to you. I kind of like the idea of without the arms. Maybe they're holding their hands behind their back or something. I'm not sure. But I have a little whole village of little gnome guys now. You can use in whatever way you like. Don't forget to leave any questions you have in the comment section for this video, and I will answer them as soon as I can. Don't forget to look in the description box for links to all the tools and supplies I used to make these little guys. I'll also leave a link to a pretty old blog post I have from a number of years ago where I created more of a three-dimensional type of gnome. If you're looking more in that direction, it might give you some inspiration on that. You'll also find a link in the description box to my Buy Me a Coffee page that you can see here. There you'll find different ways to get some quilling extras and also different ways to support the channel so that I can keep making these videos week after week. Always greatly appreciated and really, really does help. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.